Welcome. So just a reminder, the session is live streamed to YouTube and will be recorded. And so to perfect your privacy, all participants will have their video turned off and you've been muted, and the chat functionality in Zoom is turned off. But sometimes technology troubles happen, and there's a list of common challenges on the Get Involved Kingston, including your audio video isn't working. So you can adjust your view options so you can see both the presentation and the members of the project team at the same time, or you can put something in the chat to let me know that you're having a few issues. If your internet connection goes down, you can definitely call to the meeting on your invite with the telephone number there, but you can also follow live on YouTube as well. I will do my absolute best to help you with any technical problems, but sometimes the easiest way to resolve issues is the classic log in, log out of Zoom, or restart, close and restart your browser as well. You can do that all with your registration confirmation email. If you have a question at any point during the session, please use the Q&A feature, and so you're available to ask questions and follow the presentation there. And you can also raise your hand during the question and answer period to ask a question verbally, in which we'll ask you to unmute and ask a question at that point. The Q&A feature can be found in the bar across the bottom of your screen, and to ask a question, type into the question area. When a question comes in, our team will work to respond to the questions. And please know, if you don't get to all the questions, they'll be recorded and we'll definitely get back to you and post it on the project page or provide a link that you can get those answers. The process for raising your hand to speak out and ask a question is right on the screen there. And if you have a question or comment following the presentation, please use the raise hand function that could be found by using the following steps. And to click on the Q&A, a pop-up will appear, and there are multiple options. So you can choose a raise hand, and the moderator, Bruce Davis, will be monitoring this and will acknowledge you, and then turn on your microphone so you can ask a question or raise a comment. The guidelines for participation are now on the screen. If there's anything additional you would like to have added to the guidelines for this engagement session, please let us know now. To confirm that everyone agrees, we would ask that if you're not in agreement, please raise your hand during using the raise hand function. Seeing no raised hands or no objections to the guidelines for participation, we will proceed into the online engagement session for this evening. And I will turn it over to Mr. Bruce Davis, and he'll start going over the agenda. All over to you, Bruce.
Thank you very much for that background, Rob. Welcome, everyone. My name is Bruce Davis, and I'm your facilitator for this session tonight. I'm a project manager with the City of Kingston's Housing and Homeless Office, and working on the project team for the Rapid Housing Initiative here in Kingston. Before we begin the session, I'd just like to call on Linda Giroud of Tippy Moza to lead off our session this afternoon. Linda?
Miigwech, Bruce. Bonjour, Annie, Wabshki Maigan, Indigenakash, Linda, Indigenakash, Jagi Moshimong, Makwan Nindodam, Burns Lake, BC, and Dunjaba, Sidnaminda. So I introduced myself in my very limited Anishinaabe even though I'm actually Wet'suwet'en from the West Coast. I introduced myself with my spirit name of White Wolf. My English name is Linda. I sit with the Bear Clan. Like I said, originally from Burns Lake, BC, and now living just outside of Sydenham. And I introduced myself in that way because I'm not just introducing myself to those of you that have joined this call, but I've also introduced myself to the ancestors that I've asked to come and sit with us while we do this work. And I've called all our ancestors, not just my Indigenous ones, all of our ancestors that can come and help us to come and sit with us and guide us. So we just want to really acknowledge that, the land that we work and live and play on in the city of Kingston is located on the shared territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat. And when I say shared territory, it really was shared. At some points, the Haudenosaunee lived here. At other points, it was Anishinaabe. At other points, it was the Huron-Wendat. At some points, it was nobody. And it was just that meeting spot because of the natural waterways. It was our highways led us right to the spot. And I did a similar land acknowledgement yesterday for the roundtable for rapid housing. And it really got me thinking about those ancestors and what life looked like back then, when there wasn't a need for that social support. And it got me thinking that I really hope, as Indigenous people, we're always looking at least 3 generations ahead, usually 7 generations ahead, and figuring out how our actions today are going to impact those generations. And the hope that I came to was that I hope long before that 7th generation, all of us that, obviously it won't be us personally, but that there will be no need for the social housing. There'll be no need for social workers, that will just be part of community doing what community needs to do. And that's my hope, that we work ourselves out of a job sooner rather than later. A lot of things need to happen, and this is the start of it. So miigwech bizinjiawiig, thank you very much for listening. And I look forward to the rest of the meeting.
Linda, thank you very much for that. Thank you for grounding our discussions in the work and recognition of our ancestors and the past, but also kind of setting direction for us to use that as guidance for the future. And we very much appreciate you being here. And I know that as part of the program, we are also going to hear about the success that Tippy Mosa is having, and we want to talk about that tonight. Let me just say the purpose of tonight's session is to provide an update to members of the public regarding the 4 rapid housing projects that the city is undertaking with our community partners. We are expecting our Member of Parliament, former Mayor Mark Gerritsen, to join us. And I just do want to say before he gets here, he's expected to join the meeting in progress. So we will ask him to speak when he joins the call. He's been a really big champion for this federal investment in the city on affordable housing. So we want to make sure that when Mark Gerritsen gets here, that he's able to speak. This afternoon, we've assembled a panel that'll be providing information and answering your questions. And as I think Robert said, we're recording today's session and making that available online. So if you have a neighbor or someone else who's interested and they aren't able to be here this afternoon, you can certainly point them to that recording that's online. And my technical co-host for this afternoon is Rob Hoosier with the City of Kingston's Communications Office. So Rob, thank you very much in advance for helping us with the technical piece and the slides. And by all means, we really, really appreciate your help. In terms of the agenda, there's about 20 minutes of presentations. Then we'll open the floor to comments or questions. And when we get a little further along in the meeting, we'll put that slide back up that shows how you can ask your questions. We don't screen the questions. We basically go down the list and ask people to ask their questions, or you can type it into the Q&A and we can address your questions that way. And for the first part of the meeting, we're going to do the 4 rapid housing projects, and then we're going to take a pause. At 5:30, we'll take a short break. And then after 5:30, we're going to really focus on the new Indigenous Housing Services Center at Lower Union. So our friends from Tippy Mosa will actually walk us through in greater detail their plan for that Indigenous Housing Services Center at Lower Union. So that'll happen at 5:30. So if you're not interested in that part of it, you could drop off the call at 5:30, or please stay. We'd love you to hear more about it. As with any public meeting I facilitate, I always like to remind people to keep their comments concise, constructive, and considerate of other views. We're all here to make this housing better, and really, we need your input. Our panel for this afternoon, I'm just going to get our panel members to bring up their screens. Our panel for this afternoon session includes several key individuals. Ruth Nordegraff is the Director of Housing and Social Services with the City of Kingston, and she's my boss. And in a minute, Ruth will lead things off with an overview of the housing situation and the city's plans for housing. Lisa Holmes is manager, Eastern Region Community Network of Specialized Care with Onwanada, and she'll be speaking about the project at 3 Cassidy. Welcome, Lisa. Thank you for being here. Scott Vanderswaar is the Director of Assets and Development at the Kingston Frontenac Housing Corporation, and he will be speaking about the project at Curtis Crescent, which is over near St. Lawrence College. Winnie Peters is the Executive Director of Tippy Mosa and the new Indigenous Housing Services Center. And after 5:30, Winnie will be joined by Linda, who we just heard from, and Andrea and Robert, all members of the Tippy Mosa team. So that'll happen after 5:30. We're also joined today by Councillors Bridget Doherty from Portsmouth District, Councillor Robert Kiley from Trillium District, and Councillor Rob Hutchison from Kingstown. And I should mention Councillor Stroud from Sydenham District had planned to be here, and we've been briefing him all the way, and really he has another professional engagement tonight, so he's not able to make it, but he sends his best wishes and will be following this very closely. We've asked the councillors to speak towards the end of the session tonight, so that they can summarize after they've heard from members of the public and had your input. But please, councillors, if you have to jump off because of another commitment, let me know, flag that, and we'll get you, if we have to move you into the agenda a little higher up. So let's get started with an overview of the housing situation, the city's plans to support the creation of transitional, supportive, and emergency housing, and affordable housing, I should say. Ruth, over to you.
I'm sorry, Bruce, your audio has cut out. Can you just mute and unmute yourself?
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Sounds great. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so Ruth, so let's get started with an overview of the housing situation and the city's plans to support the creation of transitional, supportive, and affordable housing. Ruth Nordegraff, over to you.
Thank you so much, Bruce. And before I jump in, I also really wanted to thank Bruce and Rob for doing a lot of the work behind the scenes for making this this session a possibility. I know the COVID has brought a lot of challenges, but I think it also has added really kind of new opportunities to do engagement and share information with members of the public. So it's been really great, and it's really good to see a lot of people join the call. So my name is Ruth Nordegraff. I work at the Housing and Social Services Department. And I think we can probably all agree that housing and affordable housing has been on not only the City of Kingston's priority list, but I think every day when we open or read the news, we see that housing and affordable housing and the need for more affordable housing is a big priority in I would say all over Canada, and probably even broader than that. I think the pandemic has obviously shown even more shown the kind of increased need to have that conversation and really kind of continue to look at solutions. I know as a city, as a municipal government, we play a couple of really important roles in trying to be part of that housing development. And we have a couple of different kind of policy and priorities that we create to make sure that we can work towards that. But certainly, it's also an area where we need to work together with partners. And I'm really excited that today you will hear more about these 4 projects that we've been able to work towards with partners. But just quickly for the few minutes that I will share a couple of these pieces, and I think a lot of you are quite familiar with this as well, but just wanted to share a couple of things. As the City of Kingston, we have a 10-year housing and homelessness plan that was created back in 2013 and updated just before the pandemic in 2019. And that provides kind of the policy framework for initiatives and priorities for how to kind of continue to develop housing solutions across the housing continuum. And when we say the housing continuum, that means, and Bruce just kind of alluded to it, all sorts of housing solutions. And sometimes that means emergency housing, sometimes that's transitional or supportive housing, sometimes it's affordable housing. But it also is looking at how we continue to have ample kind of housing opportunities in the market area. So it really is kind of that full kind of scope of housing solutions. And of course there is, as we all know, there's quite a bit of need in our community to continue to develop appropriate housing solutions for all different areas. It's hard to believe that we even are going to start to turn our attention towards a new 10-year housing and homelessness plan, which we will be developing in 2023. But at this point, we're still obviously looking at our current plan. In addition to that, and I think a lot of people are familiar with this as well, is when this council came into place in late 2019, one of the main priorities, one of the 5 priorities, was housing affordability. The mayor initiated a task force on housing that again looked at the full continuum of housing developments, and this task force identified 40 recommendations that have been endorsed by council, and staff are working on implementing those recommendations and the broader community, because again, it is really a broader focus. I think many of you will have read and heard about a lot is we have to obviously create more of the actual bricks and mortar housing solutions in our community. And I'm very proud of all the work that we've done so far and all the work that we are projecting in the future. But the other piece is also really around the support services and kind of the way to kind of support various populations in our community in a successful housing tenure. In 2021, we established the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. And sorry, of course, my phone is ringing right now. And in that plan, we also have addressed a lot of priorities again as a community to work on more supporting people to be successful within their housing tenure, within their as residents in our community. And then last but not least, and this is something that we've been working on, and Bruce and his colleagues have played a really important role in this. We have done work on creating more of a focused, targeted housing supply plan that we will bring forward to our Housing and Homelessness Committee and the community. So we have a better handle on in what areas, supportive, transitional, we need housing, or how many units we are targeting, and also kind of looking at various populations and demographics. So there's a lot to unwrap there, but I think to kind of really sum it up, there's a lot of focus on housing across the full continuum of housing, not just affordable housing, and even within the kind of affordable housing, there's a lot of different types of housing solutions. And as a city, we've really been kind of working with partners, working with different levels of government to look at kind of how we can increase the number of units. I am quite proud to say that over the last year, Council has approved over 200 new housing units, which has been the highest number in a very long time. And it's been really incredible to see some housing projects come to fruition. But nevertheless, and there's an overview here of some of the projects, and obviously we'll talk about the 4 rapid housing projects, but there's a lot of work to do, and we are really continuing to find new solutions, new creative solutions, and new partnerships, because as much as the city has an important role with funding and facilitating kind of these connections, we do also need to work with our partners. So Bruce, I think that's kind of what I wanted to just kick off with. I know we'll kind of drill down in the specific projects, but just wanted to lay the foundation of all the kind of various policy documents and priorities that we're working from. Thank you.
Super. Thank you very much for that, Ruth. And I know that some of the questions may come up in the chat afterwards that really relate to the big picture. So we very much appreciate you being here and providing that overview. If you're just joining us, my name is Bruce Davis, and I'm a project manager with the City of Kingston's Housing and Homelessness Office. I'm facilitating tonight's session, but I'm also working on all of these 4 rapid housing projects. So I'm here happy to help. Before we get into the individual projects, I just want to touch on a couple of things that relate to all of them. So that you can see the continuity across the 4 projects. This is part of the National Housing Strategy that was approved by the federal government. So this is all money that's come from the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. City of Kingston was given an envelope, a spending envelope of $7.4 million to produce this rapid housing initiative. We were asked to produce 28 units of housing. In fact, our team, through all the city departments, came together And we actually were able to propose 47 units of new housing for that same amount of money. So I think CMHC is very interested in what we're doing. And as a team internally across all these departments, it's been a really, really good exercise, and working with agencies, and you'll hear from them tonight. These are deeply affordable rental units. So sometimes you'll hear people, or you'll see things in Chatter or Facebook or whatever, people saying, yeah, but how affordable is it? Well, these units are deeply affordable. So as a condition of our participating in this, the tenants can only pay, if they're on OW, Ontario Works, or ODSP, they can only pay the shelter allowance portion or 30% of their gross income. So these are what we consider deeply affordable units, all 47 of these. So that's really good news. And they have to be affordable for 20 years. So this is not a one-time only thing. So that provides some continuity in the community and for the individuals who are there. Although the city is responsible for the money and for overseeing the projects, we're working with agencies, and you'll hear from some of them tonight, but the city really has a role to guarantee that these are built on time and on budget, and to make sure that over the course of the 20 years that these continue to be affordable. We are responsible for that. And the other interesting thing is, it's a condition of the money that we got that all of these units must be built and occupied by November. So you'll hear tonight about the 4 different projects. Some are actually starting to be occupied next month. Some will be in June, some will be in October, but all of these units must be built and occupied by November. And I think that's a little bit of background. I think we're going to do the Ridley Project first. And I'm just going to ask, maybe we could do this. If you're a member of the public and you're here watching, if you were here specifically, or because you're most interested in Ridley, because that's your neighborhood, or that's what, if I could just get you to put your hand up using that little hand up tool, and that'll just kind of give us some flavor of how many folks are interested in that project. So if you can just find that raised hand thing and put your hand up, that'll give us an idea of how many people have a particular interest in that location. Okay, so that just gives us a little bit of an idea. I think we have about 40 or 50 people watching this session tonight, so that's really, really helpful. But, okay, super. So if you could put your hand down, and in a minute, I'm going to ask about the other ones, but let's just start with Ridley. Robert, if I could just get the next slide. 805 Ridley Drive, the property is actually owned by the City of Kingston. We've been using it first for COVID isolation, and then the west wing of the building has been used by the Kingston Youth Shelter as an interim location for the Kingston Youth Shelter. During COVID, they couldn't use their existing property at 234 Brock Street, so that west wing is being used by the Kingston Youth Shelter. Our rapid housing project is actually in the other side of the building. So the section of the building that's closest to the street, the east wing, and that's the side that was actually a flood last year, and we're using rapid housing money to rehabilitate that building and to turn it into 12 new apartments. And I'm just going to go to the next slide. So the idea for the east wing, what we're calling the east wing, is 12 new self-contained apartments. 8 of them are studios, 4 of them are 1-bedroom units, and 2 of them are barrier-free, fully barrier-free. And they're actually connected. We've designed it in such a way that there are actually doors between the units. So we could change the configuration depending on the tenant clients who move in. And this is targeting women, or expectant women, or women with children. This is a really, really important initiative to support women who are vulnerable. The building also includes offices, common room, laundry facility, and some additional security features that were important. But this will be good quality, safe, affordable housing, deeply affordable, as I mentioned. And our staff, our facility staff and our facilities project managers are really spearheading the design and construction of this, and they've been doing an amazing job. So I think it'd be really good quality housing for the East Wing. We are in the process of working and chatting with organizations to manage this housing. So the City of Kingston is not planning to manage it itself. And I believe in the March cycle of meetings, we will be bringing forward a recommended organization to manage the East Wing housing that's there. This housing has to be occupied by October. So if we bring a recommendation to council in March, that will give whatever organization takes this on, it gives them a few months to get organized before they have to open the doors in October. So that's a very, very quick snapshot of Ridley. The next project we have coming up is 3 Cassidy, which is on Gwinnett. And again, I'm going to get Lisa to speak, but if I could just ask people to put up their hands, if the reason they're here tonight is specifically related to Ongwanada's project at 3 Cassidy, if I could just get you to put your hand up, that will just give us some idea of who's here tonight. While we're doing that, I should just mention we did distribute flyers through Canada Post to all 4 neighborhoods, just so that people would know about this. And I hope that that got the word out. And if your neighbors did not get one or didn't find out about this, please let them know, because this recording will be posted online. So I can see we have a few people here tonight interested in 3 Cassidy. That's super. Lisa, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Bruce. So I'll just start off with a little bit of background on Ongwanada for those who might not be familiar with our organization. So Ongwanada has been operating in the Kingston community since 1948. We've been working in developmental services since 1967. We're a nonprofit accredited organization. I'm currently supporting over 600 individuals with developmental disabilities and their families in the Kingston area, as well as the Southeast region. We have a special focus on those with complex needs so that they can lead full lives effectively supported in their community. Our funding comes primarily from the Ministry of Community and Social Services. We are managed by a volunteer board of governors. We have programs and services delivered at 2 main sites in Kingston, as well as in more than 20 community residences across the Southeastern region. In addition to residential services, we also offer planning and case management, clinical services, respite, community behavioral services, adult protective services, and community participation supports. So our organization has a really strong regional and provincial presence as a lead for many initiatives in developmental service sector. One of those happens to be the Transition Age Youth Program for the Southeast region. And that's a program where we assist in the transition of youth from child welfare services to adult developmental services. And that really takes us into our reason for being with the Cassidy Street Project. So we can go to the next slide, please. So Ongwanada acquired the 3 Cassidy Street project property from the St. Lawrence Youth Association. And really, it offered an opportunity for us to address one of the issues that we have in regards to the transition age youth that we're working with. Often these youth aspire to live independently in the community, and the problem that we encounter is it's very difficult to find affordable housing for a lot of these individuals. As you know, Kingston has very limited housing supply, and housing can be quite costly, particularly when we're looking to rent for an individual who's having to live on ODSP, and so they often have challenges finding affordable housing. And on top of that, when we find affordable housing, we often find that the youth have a difficulty in maintaining that housing, particularly if they're leaving child welfare. They might not necessarily have the life skills that are required for them to be successful in their own apartment. So when we had the opportunity with the property at 3 Cassidy Street, we looked to develop it for affordable housing for these transition age youth, so that they would have a place where they could have the necessary support to live in the community, learn some new skills such as cooking, maintaining their living space, financial management, teaching them community skills such as using public transportation, accessing other community services. So that when youth are ready, then they can move on to a more traditional type of supported independent living in their own apartment in the community. So with the Rapid Housing Initiative funding, it'll enable us to do renovations to the property to provide for a 7-bed group home. So in that group home, we'll have four beds for transition age youth. So these are young adults. They can live there for up to 2 years with some exceptions based on the individual needs. And so again, as I mentioned, these are for youth who aspire to independent living, but whose level of complexity indicates a need for some additional support to ensure their future success. The property will also allow for 2 short-term emergency beds. So these are 3 months approximately. People can stay there, and it'll be available to support individuals with developmental disabilities who are at risk of homelessness or are in the midst of a placement breakdown. In addition, we'll have 1 accessible unit that will be flexible for either use. The home will have 24/7 staffing support. Each individual in the home will have their own bedroom space. There'll be shared kitchen, shared common space, and then other facilities such as recreational space on site. So we have an anticipated occupancy of October 2022. We've just awarded the architecture and project management for the project. So no renovations have started as of yet. That's it.
Lisa, thank you very much for being here. And I know that there'll be a couple of questions for your project. So thank you. Very exciting. And it's amazing to see such a beautiful heritage building being able to, repurposing it for this project. So it's really a phenomenal project. And thank you for spearheading that. The next project we're going to hear about is Curtis Crescent over near St. Lawrence College. We've got Scott Vanderswaar of the Kingston Frontenac Housing Corporation to walk us through that. Again, if I could just ask people, if you are here to hear more about this one, if I could just get a quick show of hands, that might be, that'll give us an idea of who's here and who has a particular interest in this site. That's great. Thank you very much. A few neighbors have come out, which is great. Thank you. Okay, super. So Scott, over to you if you want to walk us through this exciting project.
Oh, hi, my name is Scott Vanderswaar. I am the Director of Assets and Development with Kingston Frontenac Housing Corporation. Our project at Portsmouth Court, or Curtis Crescent, is in our step of phase 2 project. So phase 1 occurred, well, we finished off in 2020 with 15 new affordable units and market units. And this is a planned project that we were able to put forward for this rapid housing initiative. So these units are on Curtis Crescent. There's in the map on the bottom there, you'll see the in red shows building F, G, and H. So they are, F's kind of facing towards the Limestone District School Board, and then G and H are closer to Portsmouth. These are, next slide, please. The picture there shows, so these are similar units that we've done at 28 Cliff. They were built earlier in 2019, but what we're building here is essentially the same. I mean, there's some slight differences in finishes, but there are 3 additions onto existing structures that are there now. The 9 units going in are all 1-bedroom units. Each of them are approximately 580 square feet. There's a basement apartment, one on the first floor, one on the second. They all have their own exterior accesses. And next slide, please. The basement apartment is a couple stairs down, and of course the first floor and second floor. For the second floor apartment, there's interior stairs to get up to the second level. Again, this is an image used from the ones that were built at 28 Cliff, but essentially they're all the same. We've got some minor differences in the footprint, but essentially they'll look like this. Each unit has their own furnace, their own hot water heater, their own bathroom, their own kitchen, their bedroom. These units are highly efficient, meeting the requirements, exceeding the requirements set out by CMHC. Modern finishes both inside and out with new appliances. Targeting youth, age 16 to 24. More independent living looked at here. Our general contractors has We tendered for that, is just closed within a day or so, and we're reviewing bids now. The zoning has been in place for these units since early 2018. Site plan control was completed most recently. Building permits are in place now. Construction is expected to start in these units in February of this year, next month, and expected to be complete in the fall of 2022. Occupancy is scheduled for October 30th. And as I said, marketing will be targeted towards youth age 16 to 24. One of the units will be fully accessible with ground floor access, and the other 9 will be more of a standard unit. Slide. This is showing again another view what they'll look like. Again, this is a 28 Cliff, but essentially there'll be a similar style unit. That's all I have. Thank you.
Scott, thank you very much for that. And we're going to hold all the questions until we've heard from all 4 projects. Thank you for that. The last project that we're going to summarize here is Lower Union Street. I just want to mention we're going to do a very, very short summary now, and then we'll do questions. And then at 5:30, we have a detailed presentation by Tippy Moza. So if you're very interested in Lower Union, please stay. If I could just get a quick show of hands, how many people are here looking for information about Lower Union? That would be helpful for us to know. If you could just put up your hand if you have interest in Lower Union. A lot of interest in Lower Union. Lower Union is going to be our first occupied of these housing units. So a lot of interest here. That's great. Super. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. So I'll just cover off a couple of quick things. And then, as I said, we'll go to the more detailed version after the break. Lower Union is the property is actually owned by the city of Kingston. It's been leased now. We've signed a lease with Tippy Moza for 5 years with an option. They could have it for another 5 years. And we've also signed a housing services agreement in terms of what level of service Tippy will be providing to tenant clients who are there. Tippy Moza is responsible for operating this and for recruiting and managing tenants and working with client tenants there. The city owns the real estate. This will be 19 individual rooms. There are some shared amenities, like there's a shared kitchen and some shared shower rooms and that kind of thing. But individuals will have their own room, bathroom, and Tippy Moza is also arranging for them to have their own microwave and fridge in their room. We did run into a few hiccups early in the renovation process with asbestos abatement and some fire safety issues and some mechanical issues. So the project was delayed a little tiny bit, but we're very, very excited that Tippy Moza is now moving in this week, this week, and that tenants will be arriving soon. But I just want to make sure that we had the very basic outline of the project here before we took questions, and then afterwards we'll be drilling down in terms of more detail. Winnie, I've just covered that off very quickly. Did you want to jump in with anything else before we go to the break, before we go to questions, Winnie?
I just wanted to thank you, Bruce. I just wanted to let you know Tippy Moza is very excited to be entering into this partnership with the city. Obviously, we know homelessness has become a real concern, not only in Kingston, but all of Canada. And having these housing initiatives will provide some of our most vulnerable individuals with a safe, affordable place to call home. So I think it's, and the city of Kingston has definitely stepped up, and Tippy Moza especially would like to thank you and all the team at the city for all their hard work as they guide us through these processes, because without their supports, these initiatives definitely wouldn't happen. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Winnie, and we look forward to your presentation after the break. Thank you for that. So why don't we open things up? We've got time now for a couple of questions, and then we're going to go to our counselors. I do want to make sure that we get the counselors in soon, because I know that you have other obligations, Councillor Kiley. I know we've only gotten until 5:30. So if you would like to ask a question, you can either type something into the Q&A and then I can read out your question, or if you would actually like to speak, you can put your hand up and I'll just walk down the list of who has asked, and we'll just open that up. Ruth, you have a question first. Go ahead. Did you put your hand up?
That was a mistake. That was just testing if it worked.
You're just showing us how to do it. Great. And we do have a question in the chat, so I'm going to go to that one first. But so if folks would like to add their name to the queue, just put your name, raise your hand, and then we'll call on you in a second. Anything else, Robert, technically that I need to know about Q&A? No?
No, sir, you covered everything.
Okay, super. There was a question that's come in from Anna, and it was a question about Ridley. Currently, today, the west wing of the Ridley property is the interim location of the Kingston Youth Shelter. So Anna's question is, what is the plan for the youth shelter that's temporary at 805 Ridley? When should it be expected to move to its permanent location? So I can start that question off, or the answer, and then maybe Ruth, I don't know if you want to jump in. We're in the process now of starting demolition at 805 Ridley, and then we'll be starting construction shortly thereafter. We have to make sure that the construction does not impede the youth shelter operations. So they are actively now pursuing other locations so that we can expedite the construction, but also so that it's safe for staff and tenants and young people who are there. So we are trying to dovetail right now the construction schedule, the demolition schedule, and their operations. And we do not today have anything to announce in terms of a new home for the Kingston Youth Shelter. They're a vital, vital service for the city, as we all appreciate, and they have really enjoyed their time at Ridley, but we're in that shift right now. Ruth, would you like to answer anything else on that question?
No, I think I would say you've covered it all. Obviously, we are still 2 years later in some realities of the pandemic. So there are definitely some continuing COVID restrictions and kind of pieces that we need to keep in mind. But to Bruce's point, we are working very closely with the youth shelter on finding or seeing how we can support them best with that next step. And I know it's been a really, not only 805 Ridley, but also even 113 Lower Union has been incredibly helpful for them to have that temporary location. Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you, Ruth. There is one other question about the Kingston Youth Shelter from Amanda. And her question is, will the application process for each of the projects be made available to relevant agencies? So for example, we have 47 units that we're opening up by October. And Amanda would like to know how people apply for that, and will that be made available? So the short answer is yes. In the case of Tippy Mosa, I believe Winnie already has 14 people on the wait list to get in, and Tippy Mosa has been working with housing agencies and with the city referral staff and so on to try and make sure that they're finding good candidates, a good fit for that site. We'll hear more about that later, but the short answer is they are working with a list of prospective tenants now. A couple of the other sites are more oriented to youth. So I believe Amanda's involved with the youth shelter. So you really need to find out more about those locations. And we obviously, Lisa, do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I was just going to add that for our program at Cassidy Street, youth would first have to be eligible through Developmental Services Ontario, and then referrals are made through to our transition age youth coordinator that way. But also because it is fairly targeted towards those youth leaving child welfare services. So we get identified those youth typically by the Family and Children's Services.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And I know that the Kingston Frontenac Housing Corporation, they're going to have 9 units also for youth, and we will be working with them to essentially explain how people can apply. That won't happen until October, but there's certainly some work that we can do between now and then to promote that. Let's go to a couple of other questions that I see here that have come in. Alan has asked, I made reference to the fact that people can have microwaves at Lower Union. And Alan has asked, can they have a toaster instead, or a toaster oven instead of a microwave? And I know we're upgrading, or Tippy Mosa is upgrading the electrical circuit to make sure that we have the power for this. Winnie, do you want to answer that question about a toaster oven versus a microwave?
Sure. Yeah. So again, it depends on the, we are currently doing an electrical upgrade. The clients will have access to a shared kitchen, which will have all of those appliances: toaster, toaster oven, stove, fridge, all of that stuff. So it will depend on, once we get the electrical upgrade, we would have to check with the contractor to see if that would even be an option, but that's something to look into for sure.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Winnie. I have a couple of folks with their hands up. I have Alan and Justin. So I'm going to ask Robert, can we open the microphone for Alan? And then after that, we'll go to Justin. So Alan, go ahead with your question. Robert, can we open up the microphone for Alan?
Absolutely. Alan will just have to unmute. There we go.
So I wonder what specifically is being done to avoid the spread of COVID in these buildings. Perhaps you're working on good ventilation. That's probably the most important of things.
Alan, thank you very much for your question. I'm going to go to Ruth Nordgraf, Director at the Housing and Social Services Office.
Thanks, and thanks, Alan. That's a great question. I noticed that you also mentioned that in the chat. So I will start, and maybe there's a couple of the partners that would not want to jump in on the specifics. But what I will say is, with every project, especially now within COVID, also within our congregate setting, but also in these new projects, we do work really closely with public health, and maybe Winnie would actually have something to chime in there as well. But we look at the infection prevention kind of control measures that needs to be in place to be able to prevent, not only for obviously the COVID-19 situation that we're in right now, but also in general for future, to make sure that we have the best kind of environment in place to prevent any transmission. So I know over the last 2 years, we've developed a very, I would say the IPAC teams at Public Health have worked a lot with us on various projects. And again, on the kind of the mechanical side, I definitely don't have the expertise there, but maybe there are some other folks that would like to jump in there. But I will guarantee you that there is a lot of thinking around that, and a lot of learning based on the current pandemic that we're in.
I'm not sure if anyone else on the panel feels comfortable answering the question about how the infection control or prevention is working in their particular projects. Lisa, it looks like you want to jump in.
Sure. So we fall under the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services, and we follow all of the guidelines that are set out for congregate care, all the COVID guidelines. So we have fairly strict requirements in place, and Cassidy Street would fall under the same as our other group homes.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Winnie?
Yeah, so we will be meeting with the IPAC team tomorrow, actually. And once again, we'll be following all of the guidelines set out by Public Health. Our programming will not start until, we have all of the safe policies and procedures in place, and we'll be following everything from Public Health.
Okay, thank you very much for that. It turns out Justin had his hand up from a previous, when I was asking people to put their hands up, so Justin wasn't going to ask a question. We do have a couple of other questions online here. I'm going to take, actually, I'm just going to pause for a second. I do have a couple of other quick questions, but I know we're going to lose Councillor Kiley shortly. So I'm wondering, and I apologize for going out of order here, but I just want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to participate in tonight's call. I'm going to call on Councillor Robert Kiley from Trillium District. Councillor, if you'd just like to share some of your comments and thoughts before I go to some of the other questions on the list. Councillor Kiley.
Thanks so much, Bruce. Yeah, I need to take off at 5:30, so I appreciate that accommodation. And hello to everyone. I just wanted to make 2 comments, and then if I could be so bold, I might actually provide my perspective on one of the questions that's been asked. So first, I wanted to thank staff and all the community partners who have come together to make this happen. And that, of course, includes the federal government for providing $7 million. It's really encouraging to me, at least, and I hope many of you, that this money is flowing to our community. And it's neat to see that these projects are happening across the city. And that's my second comment, that we've really moved, I think, under council direction and under the help with all the good work that staff is doing to decentralizing this type of supportive and affordable housing. And I think that's a really terrific thing for our community. So it's great to see that these different projects are in different areas and different neighborhoods. And then the third thing I wanted to say quickly, not to take up too much more time, in response to a question that I saw come over my screen, towards what is being done to make communities and neighborhoods feel like they're part of the process, or that they have some sense of ownership in this. And I wanted to mention to the public that there have been a number of town hall meetings, at least for my district, and I can only speak to the 805 Ridley experience directly because I've been a part of that. There have been a number of town halls and online sessions similar to this with staff and residents and our partners. And that has, at least again, from my view only, been really helpful in bringing people together and asking honest questions and getting honest responses. And that's something that's been going on now for almost a year. And staff have been following up with emails and information sheets. So I think that in my district, people have really come around this type of programming, and it's become an integral part of our neighborhood. So it's great to know that 805 Ridley will continue to be used for this type of supportive housing. And that's all I think I'll say, because it's been a few minutes, and I'll leave it at that with thanks again to staff for organizing the event tonight.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor, and we appreciate you being here and participating. We do have a couple of other quick questions. We will get to every question that is here tonight. We want to make sure that we hear from everyone, so we will get to those before we lose. Our councillors are juggling their schedules, and we very much appreciate them being here. And thank you for being here. And I'm going to suggest we go to Councillor Doherty from Portsmouth District. Councillor, I'm just wondering if you have some thoughts that you'd like to share with us tonight, and then I'll go to Councillor Hutchison.
Thanks, Bruce. I also wanted to thank everybody involved in these initiatives. They're so sorely needed. And I want to thank Linda for her opening and reminding us of what our goal actually is. And our goal is to actually arrive at a time when we no longer have the need for these kind of discussions and to build new, because we should arrive at a stage in our community where everybody does have a roof over their heads, where everybody has access to healthy food and everybody has a sense of belonging. So yeah, thanks, Linda, for reminding us of what our goal actually is. That's just a comment, and of course it's a lot of hard work that's gone into it, but I have a question for staff, and that's, I know sometimes the easy part is actually the brick and mortar, although we need to certainly build more, but finding, and the rapid housing has certainly helped with a lot of costs, but how are we moving ahead to make sure that the organizations that we are working with to manage these projects that we're introducing, not just now when we're starting, but ongoing support for the staff there and build relationships so that continue the relationships that we've built.
Ruth, thank you very much for that, Councillor. Would you like to start on that?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much, Councillor Dorothy. I think that's an excellent question. And I know we've been spending a lot of time in council to talk about bricks and mortar, but there certainly is also a very important piece around the kind of ongoing sustainability and kind of the operational costs. I would say for these 4 projects, they're all a little bit different, but what we've done is we really try to, well, there's a few things I will share, and I'm sure Bruce might also have a few things to add. But first of all, I think over the last year, we've started to bring the various partners that work within the supportive and transitional housing space together, because I think there is a lot of opportunity to bring people together, to build new relationships, to learn from each other and kind of share, you know, resources, ideas, best practices, etc. And Bruce and John Henderson and my team have been leading the supportive and transitional housing roundtable, and I think many of our partners here today are on that. And I think that that's really been helpful to kind of start, working together and sharing information. That's all great. Obviously, it's not necessarily bringing anything on the table, but I think that that has been a really important piece. We also have been looking at like kind of more creative ways of supporting partners, because maybe as a city, we might not always be able to provide ongoing operating funding, but we do have, for instance, rent assistant funding or rent supplements or portable housing benefits. So that might help, for the tenants and for the provider to provide some additional revenue for the project rather than an ongoing, kind of subsidy. This helps, kind of to supplement some of the rents. We also have been, and again, it really is trying to, I think that's the last thing I will say, and I know it's been something that I think we've all repeated quite a bit. We also have been continuing to try to work with, for instance, the province on really looking at how do we bring in or look at better long-term solutions around the operating needs. I know, I'm sure Lisa and Winnie and Scott will have some thoughts there as well, but ultimately that it definitely needs to also be, I think, a recognition that if we do create housing with certain support services, that there needs to be a commitment from either the healthcare sector or the provincial community services sector to really truly see this as a way to, really look at how we can support members of our community better, but also how we can look at better like preventative programming or programming that ultimately would prevent people from, potentially needing more intense supports later on. So I would say those are kind of the three things: capacity building, working together, creating and forging new partnerships, looking at creative ways of adding some additional dollars to make these projects more feasible, and ongoing kind of advocacy. And I know a lot of that is happening on council level as well. So thank you for that as well, Councillor Dorothy and your colleagues, to continue to remind our government of that. I hope that helps.
That was great. I actually really appreciate your detailed answer. You even answered my follow-up question, so that's perfect. Thanks.
Sorry, thank you very much, Ruth, and thank you, Councillor Doherty. Before we take the break, we have a couple of other questions, but I just wanted to go first to Councillor Hutchison. Councillor, thank you very much for joining us this evening. I'm not sure if you have any comments or questions that you want to jump in. Councillor Hutchison from Kingstown District. Councillor Hutchison, I believe, is on the call.
You're right. Sorry about that. I just want to thank all the organizations and staff for all the work that's gone into this. It is an impressive number of units, especially compared historically. So, and I'm thankful for that. As far as, I don't know much more than was presented here today on the Anguanada 3 Cassidy Street development, but I am happy to see it. And I think that not only is it good for youth with developmental challenges, but it has good effect, I would say, indirectly and directly on homelessness in general. So it's part of the process here, so I'm glad to see it. My understanding is from, I think it was Lisa Holmes who said that there was a type of pre-qualifying going on with the ministry here, and I wouldn't mind finding out a little bit more about that, how that works. And then I have a follow-up question. Can I get an answer?
Thank you very much for that, Councillor. Lisa, can we just, I guess the question relates to the pre-qualification of the candidates, of the tenants, the clients who will be at this location. Lisa, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, to obtain services through Anguinata, individuals must first be deemed eligible through Developmental Services Ontario. So that's eligibility to confirm that they do have a developmental disability. And so that's the first requirement. And then individuals will be further screened through our own program to ensure that they're appropriate for the setting and that they would benefit from the services offered at Cassidy Street.
My follow-up question could probably be answered by you as well, if you don't mind. And that is, how did the Anguinata and the city work together on this project?
So we had identified the need for this type of housing, and through our involvement with other projects through the city, we had, timing worked out really well. We had the Cassidy Street property transferred to us from St. Lawrence Youth Association, and one of the gaps that we've identified, and I think it's one that's been identified by the city as well around homelessness, is we have a lot of youth with developmental disabilities who are landing in shelters and finding themselves homeless because they're having difficulty securing housing or maintaining their housing. And so I think we had that opportunity to work with the city, and it was really beneficial for us to be able to work with the city with the Rapid Housing Initiative, because we were then able to go back to our ministry and illustrate that we had the support from the federal, provincial, and municipal governments for the capital side of the projects. And so they were able to commit to us that they can provide the operational side.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and thank you, Councillor Hutchison. Do you have any other questions or comments, Councillor?
I don't actually, no, it's been quite fulsome, I think.
Thank you very much for participating tonight. We're almost at the break, and we're going to go about 2 minutes over if that's okay, and then we'll take the break and we'll come back. And when we come back from the break, we'll have a more detailed presentation on the Lower Union project, and Tippy Moza will be leading that discussion. But let me just see if I can get to some of these other questions here. Donald asked the question, he'd like to understand more about the 28 units that were increased to 47 units, and maybe understanding if this was smaller units or other considerations. Was it actually based on needs of the community and tailoring? So Donald has asked that question. So the way this comes about is Canada Mortgage and Housing goes to municipalities as part of the Rapid Housing Initiative. They either look at projects across the country or they partner with municipalities. In our case, they've partnered with the City of Kingston, and they've come to the City of Kingston and said, here's an allocation, 7.4 million. For that amount of money, capital investment, we need you to deliver 28 housing units. So we took that, we looked at about 20 different projects across the city, 20 different locations. Where were they in terms of zoning, partnerships, and capital budgets, and so on. And we picked projects that we thought were a really good fit. And we actually took the federal money and we were able to match it with some other provincial money, or we were able to match it with City of Kingston money. So we were able to really use it as a catalyst to deliver more. So for example, with the Lower Union project, we're using Canada Mortgage and Housing money, we're using City of Kingston money, we're using provincial investments as well. So in that particular project, I think there are 4 or 5 different funding pots, but Rapid Housing was able to make that work. In the case of Ridley, the city owned the property and again had used social services relief funding to make the acquisition. So we're able to use some provincial money to buy the property and then use federal money to fit it up and make the units work. So it was a really interesting way that it was put together. We have a great team here at the city in all the different departments and housing and finance and real estate and facilities. And we were able to put it's like a bit of a Rubik's Cube, and we were able to put it together. So CMHC was super happy that we were able to actually deliver more for their investment. And it's because we were able to partner with folks and make the math work. So we're really excited about that. And so we did not cut any corners in terms of the quality or the unit sizes. We're doing bachelors, we're doing 1 bedrooms, we're doing different configurations. And so we have not compromised quality at all. I think these will be it's good quality, affordable housing. And I think people will be pleased with the product when it's done. So I hope that answers your question. Sandra had a question. Will Curtis Crescent be considered for women with young children? It's a great question. We have set up, of the 4 projects, one of them is specifically focused for women with children, and that's the Ridley East project. When we did this deal with Canada Mortgage and Housing, we had to identify the project and what the target, kind of group would be, and we allocated the priority for women with children to Ridley East. Lower Union is people who self-identify as Indigenous, of all genders, adults, and we had 2 youth projects, one through 3 Cassidy and one through Curtis Crescent. So those are more oriented to youth. So the short answer is the Curtis Crescent is really focused on young adults. The question from Kathleen: What's being done to give residents in these projects a sense of being part of the surrounding community? And I guess the other way to turn that same question around is, how can people in the surrounding community help to make sure that these projects are part and parcel of the neighborhood? Really, really good question. I'm not sure who would like to take that one on. I'm happy to jump in, but I've been doing too much talking. In terms of how do you make sure that your project or your site is not isolated, and that's actually part and parcel of the neighborhood. Lisa, do you want to give that one a try?
I was just going to say that with any of our community residences, Onguanada takes a lot of pride in having our residents be part of the community, and especially with the 3 Cassidy Street project, a major goal of our staff that'll be working with the youth living there is to get them accustomed to being independent in the community, being part of their community. Inclusion is a major goal of ours with any of the individuals we work with. So having them be part of the community and, being part of maintaining the property. So, we will be looking at, I think one of the things we've been looking at is possibly putting a small greenhouse there, and we can grow some flowers, that sort of thing. So I think we always look for opportunities to be part of the neighborhood and to have the people that we're supporting be part of the neighborhood.
Thank you very much for that. And Scott, I know in Curtis Crescent, the new units are actually going to be attached to existing buildings. So I fully expect that that'll be part of the neighborhood. There's no us and them. Those buildings, the new additions, will really be part of the street, part of the neighborhood. In the case of Lower Union, I think we're going to talk about this a little bit after the break, but Winnie, I know that you're hoping to make sure that the community and your residents work closely together. Do you want to speak to that just briefly before the break?
Yes, I think, our residents being part of the community is going to be huge for them to be able to go down their journey of whatever it may be, whether it be any type of recovery or, connecting their culture, just to be able to be part of the community here. And we've had, I met a gentleman on the street today, and he was excited that we were going to be opening in the next couple of weeks. We have another lady who's been in contact with us for the last year since this was announced, and she just lives down the street. So I think it's the residents knowing that the community around them is in support of them. So that's going to be a big thing for them.
Thank you very much for that, Winnie. So that brings this section of tonight's presentation to a close. We've run a few minutes over. We're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to focus on the exciting new Indigenous Housing Services Center at Lower Union, and a presentation. Winnie and her team and her board members and staff will be making a presentation for us, and so there'll be an opportunity for further questions. We are still also expecting our Member of Parliament, Mark Gerritsen, to join us. So when he joins us, hopefully we'll be able to time that right. So why don't we take a 5-minute break, if that's okay, and we will be back with some exciting news. Okay, folks, welcome back. We're going to start the second half of this afternoon's meeting. If you're just joining us, my name is Bruce Davis. I'm a project manager with the City of Kingston working on housing and homeless issues, and I'm facilitating this online session and managing the 4 rapid housing projects. This part of this session is to focus on the new Indigenous Housing Services Center at 113 Lower Union. And I'm going to turn things over in a second to Winnie Peters as the Executive Director of the Tippy Moza. I do also want to mention that we have had a panel, and some of those panel members are still here in case there's another question that comes up. Ruth Nordegraff is the Director of Housing and Social Services with the City of Kingston, and Ruth was part of the first panel, and thank you for staying on, Ruth. We also have Councillors Doherty and Councillor Hutchison who stayed with us and are participating in the balance of the program. Councillor Kiley was with us for the first half and he had another commitment. Councillor Stroud from Sydenham Ward sends his regrets. He has a professional commitment tonight, but he's obviously following this very closely. And before the break, we had Lisa Holmes, a manager with Onwanada, speaking about 3 Cassidy, and Scott Vanderswaar from Kingston Frontenac Housing Corporation, speaking about Curtis Crescent. And I'd really just like to thank Lisa and Scott for participating in the first half of the program, and thank them very much for the work they've done just to build those projects and keep them on track and on schedule. So we very much appreciate their participation. I'd like to turn things over to Winnie Peters, the Executive Director of Tippy Moza. Winnie, I know you have a team that you'd like to introduce. So I'd really like to just turn this over to you. And then at the end of your presentation, if I could help facilitate any Q&A or whatever, that would be great. But working with you and your team for the past year has been an absolute highlight, a pleasure, I got to tell you. And we are so excited that you are very, very, very close to welcoming the first tenants. Anyway, it's been a really fantastic year working with you, and we're excited. So let's turn things over to you, Winnie Peters, Executive Director.
Thanks, Bruce. It absolutely has been a very exciting year. We're very, very anxious to get folks in and get them in off the street. I mean, I think that's everybody's goal. We moved in last week, and we still have a little bit of construction to do, but hopefully in the next week or so we should start being able to accept some residents in. And like you said, we do have I'm not sure if there's 13 or 14 now that are on the wait list. So we're very excited to be getting this project moving along. I'm going to introduce Rob Rittridge. He's going to do the presentation. Rob, are you there?
Hi, Winnie. Yes, I sure am. Nice to meet you. I'd also like to, as you probably already mentioned, and she's already mentioned before, introduce Linda, who's our cultural coordinator. And Linda, if you could pop on for your camera for a second and say hello, if you don't mind.
I actually did land acknowledgement at the very beginning, Robert.
Perfect. And I apologize that I couldn't be here earlier.
All good.
Perfect. I apologize that I couldn't be here earlier, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone who is watching. I was in class, but just know that I've invited all my classes to attend this presentation as well, the Community Justice Services class, because they're looking for ways and reasons to support. So anyway, we'll get right into it. If I could just give you a little bit of background about Tippy Moza. Tippy Moza itself is governed by Indigenous-led board of directors, and it's governed from a holistic perspective. Various members of the board of directors actively participate on many local committees in an advisory capacity and other capacities with various community stakeholders like the City of Kingston and the United Way and other service agencies within the community. Now, TP owns 17 rent geared to income or RGI units across Kingston. These vary from, in size from 2 bedrooms to 4 bedroom units. And TP owns 9 affordable units across the City of Kingston as well. Affordable units vary in size from 1 bedroom to 3 bedroom units. at any point. Now, TP has the funding to provide as well 10 portable housing allowances, or PHAs, in Kingston, and these allowances are not owned, or these units, sorry, are not owned and operated by TP. In fact, they're owned by private landlords in Kingston, and the funding follows the clients or the people that they're awarded to. This program runs on a first come, first served basis. And we look forward to exploring more opportunities for portable housing allowances in the future with the province and, of course, the city of Kingston. Now, specifically towards 113 Lower Union Street, which you see in front of you, that's the building right there. We've seen, of courtesy of our roving reporter, our friend Andrea, probably earlier, 113 Lower Union has about 19 shared accommodation units, as Wendy had mentioned. Each unit is a bachelor unit, has 2-piece bathroom, and soon to have their own fridge and microwave. In terms of facilities, we've received funding to be able to add those extra features in every single room, which will make it, a little more conducive for a living environment. But we'll also have a shared kitchen so that we can share living skills and support through cultural feasts and ceremony in the future. Now, the housing opportunity refers to a supportive yet temporary. I wanted to make that a highlight of this conversation. The supportive housing, but yet it's temporary. It's focused on accommodating individuals that's purpose is to bridge the gap from homelessness to permanent housing within this particular building. Now, TP Moza offers a form of structured supervision and support, whether it be, like I said, cultural, living skills, mental health skills, or any other type of education, perhaps, resume or job assistance if need be, etc., by our very supportive staff. Our staff at TP Moza go above and beyond. They go above and beyond to provide the facilities and the tools needed for our tenants on a daily basis. And we look forward to having all of those individuals and that 113 Lower Union Street in full capacity. Now, the journey is led obviously by Winnie, our executive director, and supported by our friend Amy, who's the bookkeeper / administrator. Nothing happens in that office without those two, and they are the cornerstone of the organization. A tenant may seek cultural support from our friend Linda. At times, perhaps somebody's going through a stressful day and they've had, something come on their plate that they're having trouble with and struggling with. So perhaps an opportunity to smudge inside or outside of the building, that will be, available to them. And Linda or pretty much any of the other staff will be able to help accommodate that as well. That's the type of cultural support that we're talking about here. Smudging is a small example, but teaching those living skills, teaching those basic cooking skills and problem solving skills and emotions management skills will be the crux of the support that we provide as an organization. Now, in terms of our independent living skills worker, or the individual that does most of the assistance for the independent living skills, that's Andrea. She's been a great addition to the team. And she'll be, the one working with them in terms of cooking and or any other type of culturally support that's going to be continuously relayed to each resident within the 113 Lower Union Street. We have, over the past year, as Bruce indicated earlier, we've created a solid partnership with the City of Kingston. Working with the City of Kingston has been a great experience. And we have built a strong foundation within the Indigenous community and our partner organizations to create this opportunity we have in front of us. We look forward to serving the needs of all Indigenous people and doing our part to enable our people along their journey. And 113 Lower Union will morph into not only a transitional house, but an Indigenous services hub. It will be the go-to place for Indigenous services in terms of getting a home and getting that transitional place set up and or receiving those fundings so that our people can have what they need when they need it to create their own firm foundation and move forward. Could you please advance that slide there for a second? Thank you very much. So like I say, this is just going over the traditional ceremonies that we may do, like the different partnerships that we have. We have Indigenous partnerships with Indigenous Language Nest here in Kingston, at the Association of Native Women's Association, Traumatic Informed Worker, the Addictions and Mental Health group that we have strong partnerships with them. We work with different organizations through life skills like Restart Employment, Kajita Meekum, which is an Indigenous Employment Services Agency, the Sexual Assault Center, of course, the John Howard Society, Queen's Legal Services, etc. We've attained food security through Loving Spoonful, Second Harvest, Indigenous Diabetes Health Circle, and SODI, and Queen's Food Reclamation Program and Lionheart. If we could advance the next slide, please. And that pretty much sums up what I had already mentioned in terms of what's happening, and you'll see an example of a program calendar that's going to be sent out to all of the residents and anybody that is looking for services related to housing. They'll receive one of these calendars and be able to take advantage of all of those types of activities to create that firm foundation that I was talking about. If we can move into the next slide. Again, the mini fridge that I was talking about, put in there, they can have their own food, they'll have gift cards, they'll have all the services that they need in order to live day to day, not think about where their next food or meal is coming from, and definitely not think about how cold it is outside. They'll be able to set that firm foundation and be able to jump to the next level of that hierarchy of needs. I think that's all for my presentation. Winnie, would you like to add for anything else?
No, I think you pretty much covered it all, Robert. I know that Andrea is going to do a virtual tour. So Bruce, if she's okay to do that.
Winnie, sorry, I'm just, can I just make one quick suggestion before we go to the virtual tour, because we're going to shut down this slide deck and then we'll go to your on-site live reporter. Could you just back this slide up one slide? I think you have a slide here about policies. Just, you might want to give people a little bit of an idea, and then the next one after this, if you could just touch on this.
Okay, if I can do that, Winnie,
sure.
If you don't mind. So the premise of Indigenous living, or Indigenous healthy living, or culturally oriented supported living, is that we walk the journey, or we live a life based on balanced road activities and the 7 grandfather teachings. And within those teachings and within that life, if we're true to those teachings, that means that there's really no use of definitely not illicit substances, but any other type of recreational substances like alcohol and or marijuana or anything else like that. This is a clean property. Unfortunately, we won't have the availability to have pets at this time, but I'm sure when the individuals get out of transitional housing into their own places, that option may be available for them. In terms of being in the building, there would be no smoking, obviously for fire hazard reasons, but there will be a facility outside of the building that will be able to accommodate smoking in an appropriate area if you do, participate in that type of substance use. And of course, there would be no overnight guests. And this is particular to all of our future residents, that the place is meant for them and for their own, solid point of rehabilitation into their own, physical residence. It's that transition part, and it's not meant to be a social gathering place, although it will be conducive for social support. all the rest of the negative shadow road lifestyle type of things, as I would describe them, can be left outside at the door. We're hoping to have partial occupancy by the 14th, or sorry, I would say by the 14th of February for partial occupancy. Obviously, the 14th of January has already passed. We're running a little bit late behind our original schedule. However, we're trying to get individuals in as quickly as possible. We'll have substantial completion of construction by February 15th. January, office moves in, which we already have last week. And as you can see, Winnie's sitting in the office right there, and she's trying to get everything set up. So it's kind of a little bit of a hectic time right now. Winnie mentioned that we've got a lot of people on the wait list, and we are almost set for 1 or 2 or 3 individuals to move in. I'm sure that Winnie can confirm that, it will be a staggered move. We will have individuals come in a staggered approach, 1, 2 here, 3 here, up in, not 19 all at once, so that we can get used to the daily practices and different policies and procedures that need to be created and developed throughout this time. Like it says there, February to August, we'll have approximately 10 tenants. And after August, we'll receive a full complement. And I'm sure that the wait list will grow once this communication gets out and further communication is provided to other individuals. Once they figure out that we're here and we're built and we're providing services, they will come. Is there a next slide? Okay, and the last question is, how can you help? If you're a neighbor, please come by, introduce yourself. Winnie is there many of the times. The rest of the staff will be popping in and out all the time. They're always very pleasant individuals, and let us get to know who you are. And of course, construction, there's only 2 seasons in the city of Kingston, right? There's winter and construction. Well, we just happen to have construction in the winter time. So please be patient with us. There might be a couple of hammering, a couple of banging and everything else like that. But once we get settled in, all that will quell down and go back to normal. Donations, in terms of donations, we have an older lady that donates every 3 months or so, whatever she can, and she does that via e-transfer, and we're very appreciative of that. That intent alone is worth more than the thought alone itself is worth more than anything to us. So other donations like loaves of bread, extra loaves of bread, some food for the residents, perhaps anything, small donations or what have you, anything that you may think of that are sustainable, that are usable, and that will help our clients and or our organization. We'd be more than happy to accept and entertain. So thank you very much.
Robert, thank you very much for that. And I know we do have time for questions in a couple of minutes. Before we do, we have your roving reporter, Andrea. I believe she's actually at Lower Union tonight. And I think, Andrea, we're going to bring you up on the screen. If you could just give us a very quick walk through the building. I think this is a fun way of doing it. Andrea, let's get you up on camera.
Hello, everyone. So I will try not to turn my camera different ways this time. I just need to figure out how to flip it. Okay, here we go. So this is right at the front door of Lower Union when you first come in. Here is Linda and I's office. So we'll be on the main floor with our kitchen. And this is hopefully will be a little bit of a gathering place for everyone during meal times. Just having some technical issues. There we go. So we've already started collecting some medicines as well. So these are some teas that the tenants or residents will have access to. And then down our lovely hallway, we have a mural. That is Indigenous art by an Indigenous artist in Kingston. As we cross through here, this is our residential side. This side is what is still under construction currently. I'll give you a little sneak peek into one of our rooms. So all 19 units in Lower Union are bachelors. They have a very similar floor plan across all of them, as well as their two-piece bathroom. Unfortunately, we're not set up, so we also have the shared accommodation laundry room and bathrooms right here, and more down this hallway as well. Above the kitchen is actually a resource center, so that will be where we do most of our programming, housing searches, and things like that.
Andrea, that's amazing. Thank you very much for that presentation. And that's just a fun way for us to see inside the building. It's a COVID-safe way for us to see inside the building. And just for the benefit of people, Lower Union is actually two buildings kind of side by side. One half of the building will be the office, administration, and kitchen. And then upstairs is more offices in the resource center. And then you pass through, and Andrea showed us that hallway, and that leads over into the residential side. So tenants on that side will have their own privacy, and that's separate from the office part of the building. So anyway, it's a really neat setup, and just amazing to see the art on the walls and everything's taking shape there. We're going to go to some questions and answers. Before we do that, and Andrea, thank you very much for that. I just want to take a minute to introduce our Member of Parliament and former Mayor, Mark Gerritsen, who's here. And Mark, thank you very much for joining us. Earlier tonight, we heard about all 4 rapid housing projects and the Canada Mortgage and Housing investment of $7.4 million into affordable housing in Kingston. And the second half of the evening is really to talk about Lower Union, because that one we're doing a bit more, it's about to open. But we wanted to just take a minute to thank you for being here and give you a few minutes to make some comments. And when you weren't here, I was mentioning how you've been a big champion for affordable housing and investment in Kingston. So we very much appreciate not just your participation tonight, but also just championing housing and affordable housing. So Mark, over to you.
Well, thanks, Bruce. And I apologize for jumping in late. I've been literally back-to-back meeting all day, pretty much sitting from this desk in my home office. But I'm really glad that I've had the opportunity to jump in at this point. To be honest, I'm really here to listen more than I was expecting to speak. Having said that, I'm glad that I caught that bit where Andrea was showing us inside the Lower Union Street project. I think that is a great example of repurposing existing infrastructure so that we can get people into housing that need it so badly so quickly. As we all know, housing is in a crisis state in our country. We need to do everything from affordable housing in terms of rent geared to income right up to affordable home ownership. And so the $73 billion plus that the federal government had committed to over a 10-year period, to be honest, it started at 50 million back in 2016 and has increased as a result of the demand, I think is putting us in the right direction. Various different parts of that money can be used for different operations, whether it's for rapid housing, of which there are 4 projects you're talking about tonight, but also some of the more traditional agreements that the federal government can enter into with the province and the municipal government. So, like you said, Bruce, I've always kind of been around affordable housing in terms of being part of the discussion in Kingston in one way or the other. Before I was even a city councillor, the very first committee I ever participated in the city of Kingston back in 2004, I believe is when it started, was the Affordable Housing Development Committee. I know that there are so many people behind the scenes, whether you're volunteers on some of the boards that provide housing, or whether you're a volunteer on the various different affordable housing committees that the city has had over the years.
Your participation in this is absolutely key. The federal government and the provincial government, for that matter, and quite frankly, the municipal governments couldn't do this without the incredible volunteers that are out there, not just on these boards and participating in these committees, but also in advocating for affordable housing on a daily basis. So I'll leave it at that. I'm certainly looking forward to listening to the rest of the discussion this evening and learning more about what the fine folks in our community are continuing to do on a daily basis. Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you very much, Mark, our Member of Parliament and champion for affordable housing. I'm just wondering if we could bring up our Tippy-Mosa partners here, Winnie and Robert and Andrea and Linda, so that we can do a couple of questions and answers, if that's okay. And a couple of things that have come up here on the screen. People have, you can either type your question into the Q&A box, or you can put your hand up, and then I'll just go down the list and pick folks out. But a couple of things that have already come up in the chat. People are asking, can we come over and say hello, or can we get a tour? And there are two considerations, and I'm going to turn this over to Robert and Winnie, but there are two considerations. One is the COVID consideration, and the other is the privacy. There are some privacy issues. So I know that Tippy-Mosa was planning to do some kind of an open house before the tenants actually moved in, but I know now that we're trying to delicately figure out what the rules can be with COVID, up and down, and up one week and down the next. So Winnie and Robert, would you like to just speak to that question about, is there an opportunity for neighbors to come by and say hello?
Go ahead there, Winnie.
Yeah, so I think we are going to meet with the IPAC team tomorrow. So we'll have more information on the COVID policies, procedures, because we want to make sure that we're following those to the T. And again, Bruce did mention the privacy aspect. I have no problem though if anybody, has any questions, concerns, or just would like to come and talk to me. We can absolutely come into my office.
Yeah, and like Bruce had mentioned before, there's really two parts to this this particular building here. There's the residential side, and then there's the office administrative side, and that's the 113.5 Lower Union side, which is the office administrator side. And anytime the organization, barring COVID restrictions, obviously, because we don't want to put anybody in jeopardy or put anybody at risk, you can pop over and one of us will be there. Most likely Winnie. She's there all the time.
Great. Let's just see if anyone has their hands up. If anyone would like to ask a question, if you would like to ask a question, you can put your hands up. I see a question from Alan asking about the building materials. And I apologize, this is not an area where I'm an expert. I'm not sure if anyone here is, but certainly the building materials and the specifications, design, and construction is all being managed by our facilities and construction management team at the city, which has very high environmental standards. And I know we're upgrading all of the mechanicals to get more efficient heating and ventilation. I know that's part of this. So I apologize, I can't specifically answer your question, Alan, about the building materials that are used, but they meet or exceed building code requirements. And I'm just not sure if we can add more to your question on that. Sammy has asked a question about what, if anything, the City of Kingston is doing to lobby the Government of Canada about, and other ministries, about the average house prices and affordable housing generally. So it's not really specific to the 4 rapid housing projects that we have on our agenda tonight. So Sammy, what you may want to do is write to your councillor or councillors and ask them how the City of Kingston is addressing the overall issue of housing affordability and lobbying of the government. So that was your question, and it might be best suited if you posed it to them that way. I had a question, and it hasn't really come up, and people aren't really talking about it too much, but the Indigenous Housing Services Center has housing for 19 people on site. But this is way more than just housing for people who are there. And I know this is also a housing resource center. So for people who self-identify as Indigenous and they're part of the community, they can also come to the center as a resource center to help them with their housing needs. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to that, Winnie or Robert or one of your staff could speak to how you're supporting people who may not be living there.
So I can speak to that. So if there is, again, if they have to self-identify as Indigenous, if they are, in need of assistance in trying to find safe, affordable housing, they can come in. We're going to have a resource center that will have some computers that they'll be able to access. Also, if they are having any types of notices served from their landlords, whether it be non-payment of rent or any behavioral issues or whatnot. I have a little bit of background where I could assist them. And if I'm not able to assist them, I can definitely connect them with the legal clinic in Kingston. So there's a few different things that we can assist them with for their housing needs.
Okay, super. Any other questions? Anyone want to jump in with other questions? I'm just so excited that this is coming together. Councillor Doherty, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, Robert, and for all the great work everybody involved. It's so dearly needed. I guess my question is more about this is transitional housing, and what are the plans and steps really to help people move on from that? I know we're a little bit away from that and we got to get started first, but I just do want to hear about that and how city staff and the city can help you with that really important component is when people have had a chance to heal and are ready to move on, what it is that we can do to help them also find permanent housing.
Thank you, Councillor Doherty. If I could speak to that in a general sense there, Winnie. From my experiences, I'm a federal public servant as well in my day job. And from my experiences, when you bring cultural identity into the equation, and that has been missing before, then you bring that sense of self-worth and awareness. So the plan is, have a safe, culturally conducive living environment for those individuals to attach to their cultural identity, and then the magic starts to happen. Like I had mentioned before, the facility will have cultural ceremonial activities, but basically they'll have the understanding that this is not a forever, this is a temporary, this is a step up. And they'll be working with the fine staff at TP Moza to be able to access those second and third steps into their permanent housing and or any other option that they choose to, once they've been once they believe that they're sustainable. It will usually happen within the first year, but it may happen over a span of 2 to 3.
And so people will not feel rushed either and pressured, because I wouldn't imagine that would be helpful at all then.
No, well, I mean, as far as the rust and pressure is concerned, up to about 4 years or so. I mean, being the fact that this is a temporary transitional housing into something better. But like I said before, it's that cultural identification and those cultural services that really make the difference in terms of, or in comparison to our mainstream counterparts, right? It's that has been lost, and once that has been found, then people flourish.
Excellent. That's really fantastic that we have an opportunity to actually do reconciliation. So, okay, thanks.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor. Councillor, do you have any other questions? Councillor Doherty, you're good. Thank you very much for that. This partnership came about really because City Council in June really agreed to a partnership with TP Moza. So this has come about because of your leadership. So we very much appreciate the councillors who are here for believing in the partnership, and we've been doing everything we can to make it work, and very, very excited about this. Thank you. So we have another question here from Donald. Donald's question isn't specifically about TP Moza, so it's a little bit broader. Let me read the question, and I think we're going to send this over to Ruth. Donald has a question. It's mentioned that their programs are funding that follow the tenant. So these are portable housing benefits, regardless of the housing landlord or the location. And he's asking about demand for more of a social style of collaborative housing or co-living. Is this something more desired by members of the community, or is there really just demand for single unit on your own style housing? And Ruth, I'm wondering if we can go to you with that one. So that's not specifically about Lower Union. It does speak to it a little bit. You have both the individual units and the collaborative piece with your site. But Ruth, do you want to try that question?
Yeah, and I think it's a really good question. So thanks for raising it. And I know it's not specifically for Lower Union. I think really, to be quite frank, and I think MP Gerritsen just mentioned it as well, I think there is need everywhere. We see it across the housing continuum. We see it in different demographics, different age groups. So I don't think there is a perfect answer to this question on kind of, I think there's need on in every area. And I think we, for instance, with the Lower Union projects, and obviously really inspiring to hear from our partner, but we see that there is a need to kind of create that initial kind of more like congregates, kind of communal space before people may be ready to move into more of a single or occupants kind of solution. But there are also people that or individuals that are looking for their own individual units and may not need any transitional or supportive support. So I would say for that part of the question, I would say it really is, I think we really are looking at a lot of different housing solutions for different situations, and there is not really a one size fits all. What we have been doing is kind of alluded to that in my introduction earlier. We are working on kind of a better kind of housing supply plan that does touch on all those different models and potential partnerships and ways of kind of developing more of those in our community. On your question, on the part of the kind of the benefits and the kind of providing tenants or individuals basically an additional rent assistance or rent supplements, you are absolutely right. I mean, we have been able to work with the Tippy Mosa partnership on creating some additional rent assistance for tenants, and we have also different tools in our toolkits in our social housing program. We provide portable housing benefits for people that are in need for social or RGI housing, which is new, kind of not just a brick, so people will not necessarily have to look for a social housing bricks and mortar unit, but can actually use that subsidy to then look for a housing solution. And that certainly is something that we're further kind of building. There is a Canada Ontario Housing Benefits that's being launched that we're rolling out in our community, and council in their last cycle also agreed to add some more rent assistance dollars into the homelessness sector, so we can actually continue to work on those solutions. So always happy to have an offline conversation. I know this is a very high level answer, but great question, and definitely all those different pieces are going to be crucial to support members of our community.
Thank you very much for that, Ruth. On the Tippy Mosa part of this, though, I just want to be clear. So although people have their own individual units, they're part of a community of living there. And when they move on to another apartment, they can still be part of that community base at Lower Union. I'm sure those services will still be available and supports will be available. Is that right? So even though people may eventually move into their own units, they can still be part of that network.
Yeah, absolutely. If they, transition out into their own space and they feel the need to come back for any types of supports, absolutely, we will be available.
Thank you very much, Winnie and Robert and Linda and Andrea for your presentation on this. And I think I don't see any other questions for you. I'm just wondering if we can bring up the slide that has Robert, that has the contact information. And tonight was really just an opportunity for us to share information about 4 amazing projects. And the Lower Union Indigenous Housing Services Center we're so proud of the work that you're doing and excited to see that tenants will be moving in the next couple of weeks. But tonight we very briefly discussed 4 sites, the Ridley Drive project, 805 Ridley Drive. We will be bringing forward the name of an operator for that probably in the March cycle at council meetings. If you have any questions about the Ridley project going forward, you can just write to me, bdavis@cityofkingston.ca, and I'm happy to try and stick handle your questions. We heard from Anguinata, from Lisa, about their project for youth at 3 Cassidy. And if you have any questions about that particular site, you can just reach out to Lisa. Her email is here. At Curtis Crescent, over near St. Lawrence College, we're adding 9 one-bedroom units through Kingston Frontenac Housing Corporation. And you can just reach out to Scott Vanderswaar, who's the Director of Development there. If you have any questions about that, that will evolve over the coming months, and you'll hear more about that as it happens. And here is Winnie's email address. So please reach out to her if you want to drop by, or if you have any questions, or if you want to make a referral, please don't hesitate to reach out to any one of these. Let me just take a minute to thank everyone for being part of tonight, for members of the public who are here to find out more about affordable housing and how you can help and what's going on in your neighborhood. Thank you for giving up your time this afternoon. Thank you very much to the panelists who are here. We had Ruth Nordegraft, Director at the Housing and Social Services Office, Lisa Holmes from Anguinata, Scott Vanderswaar from Kingston Frontenac Housing Corporation, Winnie Peters and Robert Wittich, and Linda Giroud and Andrea Wardell from Tippy Mosa. Thank you, of course, to our city councillors. This would not be possible without their support. Councillor Doherty, Councillor Hutchison, Councillor Kiley were here, and also Councillor Stroud has been supporting this and was not able to make it tonight due to a professional commitment. And thank you to our Member of Parliament, former Mayor Mark Gerritsen, for being here and for championing affordable housing. And with that, we're going to bring tonight's meeting to a close, and I'm going to turn things back over to my co-technical host, Robert Hosier from the City of Kingston's Communications Office. And Robert, I'm not sure if there's anything that we have to do, or is there any final words that you have from a technical point of view?
As usual, Bruce, yourself and your circle of experts have done a great job presenting this critical information this evening. Thank you everyone so much for coming. I'm going to finish the recording by sharing the screen one more time for a few more seconds on how to find out more and the key contacts on this. And with that, we'll be wrapping things up directly at 6:30. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us.